Hi, I'm Michelle, the Irritable Vegan, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing the high FODMAP foods I've been eating recently alongside a dose of FODzyme. If you're not familiar with FODzyme, it's a unique blend of enzymes designed to break down the FODMAPs in food, making them easier to digest. Keep watching to see all the different types of foods that FODzyme makes it possible to eat and enjoy, and how to confidently use FODzyme with everything from roast dinners to burritos to get the best results. Let's get into it. So before we dive in, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to FODzyme for sponsoring this video and for sharing with me their life-changing product. If this had been available way back when, my own low FODMAP experience would have looked very different, which is why I'm so chuffed to be able to share it with you today and hopefully help to set you on the path towards your own food and FODMAP freedom that you've been looking for. This video goes hand in hand with my detailed FODzyme review blog post, which you can find linked in the description box below. Make sure you check that out because I go into a lot more detail about how and why digestive enzymes such as FODzyme work, the frequently asked questions, the costs, and the science and research behind it. Perhaps more importantly, you can find the link for my exclusive 15% discount that you're not going to want to miss. I give honest feedback about how I felt after every dose and how different every meal would have looked during the restricted phase of the low FODMAP diet. So pop over there once you've watched this video. But just to give you a basic idea, FODzyme is a food supplement that comes in powdered form that you sprinkle onto food containing fructans, GOS or lactose just before eating. The enzymes get to work as soon as they come into contact with the food to begin breaking down the FODMAPs. And then as you chew, the enzymes continue pre-digesting the FODMAPs that you're eating, giving your digestive system a head start and making it easier to tolerate and digest the remaining FODMAPs in the meal. Let's take a look at what I've been eating to give you some inspiration for all of the delicious food that you could be eating and enjoying with the help of FODzyme. Starting with a classic British Sunday dinner. So this meal included some seriously high FODMAP offenders such as a chicken style roast made from wheat gluten and pea protein, wheat based sage and onion stuffing and fart inducing Brussels sprouts, all swimming in thick onion gravy as is the northern way. So here I'm using a sachet from the FODzyme on the go kit, which is a handy single dose portable pack, ideal for taking with you when you're eating on the go. Now, as this meal contains some low FODMAP foods such as the potatoes, parsnips, carrots and kale, I want to make sure I'm getting the best out of the enzymes, so that means putting them to use on the foods with the most FODMAPs. So I targeted the dose directly onto the wheat meat and stuffing. All you need to do is sprinkle FODzyme evenly on the food you want to target. Think of it as lightly sprinkling seasoning onto your meal, just as you might add salt or pepper at the table. But what about those pesky sprouts? Well, I'll show you my top tip for those in a sec, but I just wanted to mention why I'm avoiding the mashed carrots and swede. That's because FODzyme doesn't currently target polyols, so the enzymes will be more effective used elsewhere on the meal. Now the rest of the sachet is going into the gravy, not only to target the fructans from the onion and garlic in there, but also as a way to distribute the enzymes evenly across the rest of the plate, which is a great way to get FODzyme into every bite. It's also how we're going to tackle those pesky sprouts, because this way the FODzyme is dissolved into the gravy and we don't need to worry about the powder rolling off our sprouts and going to waste. So that's meal number one. How hearty did that look and how easy was it to get the FODzyme where we needed it to be? Now onto this fully stacked vegan chicken BLT sandwich. I made a quick homemade coleslaw to go with it, which as you'll see later is another great way to get your FODzyme onto tricky foods. I'm using red cabbage that contains both fructans and GOS in large portions, FODMAP-free carrot, fructan-filled red onion and FODMAP-free radish. I don't know about you, but raw veggies such as cabbage and red onion in coleslaw have a much harsher effect on my gut than when they're cooked, so I'm really putting my tolerances and FODzyme to the test today. For the sandwich, I'm using some lovely thick sliced tiger bread that I've griddled to perfection. And as this is wheat based, we need to tackle the FODMAPs in that, which we're going to do with a little help from the coleslaw. I'm adding about a third of a dose into a single serving of the coleslaw, as I want to save some of the FODzyme to show you a different dosing technique later. We need to give that a good stir to make sure the powder dissolves and that the enzymes mix with the onion and cabbage. I generously spread the coleslaw onto the toast, and now that FODzyme dosed coleslaw is also coming into contact with the fructans in the bread. From there, I continue to build my butty with vegan bacon, cucumber, and that leftover chicken style roast. Just for good measure, as this is going to be fully loaded, I sprinkle another third of a dose directly onto the wheat meat, which is thankfully juicy enough for the powder to stick. We finish the stack with some salad bits and a generous slather of salad cream. And just look at that, is it not a thing of beauty? I cannot tell you how excited I am to tuck into this. It smells delicious and I can't wait. You also saw me sprinkle a little bit more of the FODZIME on the chicken style slices. That's because they're again one of the highest FODMAP foods within the sandwich. But I'm also going to show you a little trick that you may not be aware of, and that's called the first bite method. So if, for example, you'd bought this sandwich out and about or at a restaurant, you wouldn't have had the ability to add the FODZIME into any of the ingredients while the sandwich was being made. And you probably don't want to sit there at the table and deconstruct the sandwich in order to try and spread it across the highest FODMAP foods. So this is a little trick that you can do, and it's especially good when you are eating out. And what we do is we take our high FODMAP sandwich and we pop a little bit of, now you can do this either with the full dose, so the full dose can go on that single bite there, or you can keep adding as you eat the sandwich as you go, which is probably the method that I'm going to do today. So we've got the dose on there and then we just take a bite. That was worth the wait. So let's show you that first bite method in a little bit more detail. So here we are, and of course with this sandwich, the bread itself is a FODMAP, but you're not really going to get the FODZIME to stick on the bread like this. It's more than likely just going to either bounce off or it's going to fall off as you pick the sandwich up. And again, we're going to sprinkle quite a lot on. And then just like we did before, with that powder on there, you take a bite, you chew, you enjoy. Repeat, repeat, repeat until all of that powder is gone. Don't forget to make sure that you're eating any dips or sides that you added the powder to, just to make sure that you're getting that full dose. So today's meal is GOS and fructan heavy. We've got the GOS in the form of the split dried chana dal. For the fructans, we've got onions, garlic, courgette, and also the green bell pepper. There is also some garlic granules in the curry powder. When I was on the restricted low FODMAP diet, I used to make my own curry powder, but now it's just much simpler to be able to buy it. And then I've also got some fructose in this meal in the form of the tomatoes and the tomato puree. Those are not targeted by the FODZIME, but I'm hoping that the FODZIME is going to do a really good job of breaking down all the FODMAPs in these fructans, so then we don't really need to worry about any of the other FODMAPs in the meal. I'm fairly new to using the Instant Pot and still getting used to cooking with it, which is why unfortunately this recipe was a bit of a fail. But I wanted to show it to you anyway because thanks to FODZIME there was a way to salvage it. To thicken up the sauce without wasting time and fuel simmering it away, I added an additional portion of dried red lentils into the pot. Now this is something I would never have considered during the low FODMAP diet. Adding lentils on split peas in the same recipe is a surefire way to risk FODMAP stacking. But in for a penny, in for a pound, and the confidence I have in FODZIME's ability to break down that extra GOS means that this recipe turned out beautifully in the end. After adding in my spinach, I pressure cooked the unsoaked lentils for 3 minutes and it thickened the dal perfectly. A squeeze of lemon and a dollop of yoghurt later, and I'm ready to tuck in. I serve the dal with whole grain rice, poppadoms and a cheeky slice of garlic naan. And this time I'm using the FODZIME Home Kit, which comes in a recycled jar with a mini spoon for accurately measuring a single dose, which is 1/4 teaspoon. I found it easier to lightly tap the spoon to distribute the enzymes. Just make sure you're replacing that lid as soon as you've got your dose out to avoid spilling and reduce risk of exposing the enzymes to moisture. And this type of meal is probably the easiest when it comes to adding FODZIME. Just sprinkle and stir and the powder melts away into the dish without a trace. You honestly don't even know it's there. Now this bean-filled burrito is quite possibly the most exciting FODZIME revelation of all for me, and helped me to finally regain the missing piece of food freedom that's evaded me since I began the low FODMAP diet. It might sound ridiculous, but I haven't eaten dried whole beans that I've cooked from scratch since 2017. Despite all the foods I've reintroduced and all the progress I've made beyond the restrictions of the low FODMAP diet, I had a total mental block that I just couldn't get past when it came to whole beans. I thought now was the perfect time to get over this lingering food fear and embrace total FODMAP freedom. Whilst the beans cooked, I put together a fructan heavy salsa using cherry tomatoes, yellow and green bell pepper, raw red onion, which is possibly my biggest FODMAP trigger, and spring onion greens. I added a squeeze of lime, garlic oil, which isn't considered low FODMAP due to the garlic pieces, fresh herbs and seasonings. I used more red onion and garlic in the beans, but sautéed them alongside the cooked beans. I added lime juice, ground cumin, smoked paprika, chilli flakes, then committed a huge high FODMAP no-no by adding in the GOS and fructan-laden cooking water from the beans, which I would never dreamed of doing before having FODZIME on hand. So please let me know in the comments below what your first high FODMAP meal would be alongside a dose of FODZIME. So as you saw there, I did actually sprinkle a little bit of the FODZIME onto those beans because I was making the burrito myself, and those beans are some of the most highest FODMAP foods in this recipe. They've got the fructans, they've got the GOS, so I really did want to make sure to give myself a head start to get some of the FODZIME on there just so that can start to break them down. Now I do want to show you a really great tip. If, for example, you were eating out and you ordered a burrito from a stand or from a restaurant and it came to you ready rolled. So obviously you're not going to really want to start taking it all apart, and as you saw from the way that I rolled mine, that is a recipe for disaster. So what you are going to want to do is to add the FODZIME either with the first bite method, or there's another sneaky trick that you can use, and that is to add it to a dip or side. And as long as that's a FODMAP containing food, so for example for a salsa, there's very likely to be onion and garlic in there, you can actually add the FODZIME into the dip. So you can then dunk whatever you're eating in there, or you can spoon it onto the corner, so you're not using that direct sprinkling of the powder straight onto there. The FODZIME will actually be mixed into a sauce or a side, and then you can just eat it alongside, or you can just keep spooning little spoonfuls onto each corner of the burrito or whatever it is you're eating. And you may have also noticed that I did dish out the salsa from the dish that I made it in into a single serving bowl, and that's also really important. You don't want to be adding the FODZIME to the entire amount of salsa. You just want to be adding it to the amount that you know you're going to eat within the space of 30 minutes in this single meal. So I'm just going to show you now how I'm going to make sure that I'm getting that full dose of FODZIME. So with the leftover rice and that FODZIME infused salsa, and I've now got an absolutely delicious side salad to eat alongside my burrito, and we know that none of that FODZIME dose went to waste. So today's high FODMAP meal is salad. Now if you know me, you'll know that I like to make my salads really, really satisfying and filling. But the downside of that is that often means that I'm going to be adding high FODMAP ingredients. So today, for example, I'm going to go with these ready-made lentils. These typically would be something I'd avoid in the low FODMAP diet, just because they do have flavourings, garlic, onion and things like that in there, but they're so good for a really quick and easy meal. I've also got some homemade barley. This was done in the Instant Pot, and that's going to help to make it really filling and satisfying. I'm going to add some vegan feta cheese, and this one is coconut oil based, so that is fructan containing. Speaking of fructans, I'm also going to add some of this cooked beetroot. This actually only has a very, very small low FODMAP serving. I'm also going to be eating the full length of the spring onions, not just the green tops. And I've got these absolutely fresh and delicious homegrown pea shoots. I have no idea what FODMAPs they contain. I'm assuming it would probably be GOS, but there's no way to tell because they are yet untested. But they are so fresh and lovely. They are definitely going into the salad to add a little bit of crunch. And then with all that, I'm going to show you a really, really good tip for getting the Fodzyme powder to actually stick to the food by adding it into a dressing. So I'm going to start my dressing today with shop-bought pre-made hummus. Obviously on the restricted phase of a low FODMAP diet you would be avoiding this, but you can make your own hummus, and this is going to be the GOS content of our recipe, and there's also likely to be a little bit of fructans in there from the garlic granules. So this is going to be the base of our dressing, so that's a pretty decent portion of hummus there. And let's not forget that I am trying to make this a single portion of dressing so that I can make sure that when I add the Fodzyme I am going to get a full dose. I don't want to be sharing this dressing out and losing out on some of those important enzymes. So once again, I'm using the Fodzyme Home Kit, which is the loose powder. And if you're familiar with using measuring spoons, then this will just be second nature to you because it's very similar. Just tap off the excess to give a level spoonful. And this is much easier to do in your own home than I'm making it look here, when I'm posing for two cameras with one eye on my monitor, checking it's all in focus. You just sprinkle and stir in seconds. Then for purely aesthetic purposes, I dotted the dressing around the salad. In real life, I'd simply throw it all in and stir it up until the salad was fully dressed in the creamy hummus. And this would be the best way to get that Fodzyme in contact with everything before you tuck in. So today I'm going to be testing Fodzyme against one of my all-time favourite combinations, pasta and good old garlic bread. And it's probably one of the meals that I missed the most, one of the combinations that I missed the most on a really strict low FODMAP diet. Of course there are gluten-free alternatives available, but I never found that these quite suited my taste, and they definitely never suited my budget. So today we've got the real deal. I've got some filled wheat pasta. Now this is filled with mushrooms which aren't currently targeted by Fodzyme, but the idea is that the Fodzyme is going to tackle fructans and the GOS, and that should hopefully help to reduce the overall FODMAP content of the meal. So the fact that it doesn't specifically target the polyols in the mushrooms is hopefully not going to be a massive deal. And I'm going to pair that with some of these gorgeous little tiger rolls. I'm going to try and do like a little hedgehog garlic bread. But alongside that, because we are here in spring, I did want to bring a bit of a spring vibe into it. So thanks so much to my husband, who along with the dog woke up at 5 o'clock this morning with me in order for me to be able to go out and to ethically harvest some of this wild garlic from a location that it isn't particularly easy for me to get to without the car. So thank you so much to him. And here we are. This is all I got. These two small handfuls from a huge acreage where this wild garlic is really, really abundant. Now, wild garlic isn't specifically listed in the Monash app, so I'm not entirely sure exactly which FODMAPs are present in the wild garlic. I am going to assume fructans, but I know that some people do tend to tolerate wild garlic much better than the cultivated garlic, so I'm really excited to use that as one of the main greens in the sauce. Now, to make the rest of the sauce, I'm going to go with like a creamy sauce. So I'm going full tilt here with the GOS and fructans. Not only am I using the soft silken tofu, but I'm also going to use all of the liquid that's in the container, which as most of you will probably know, contains a majority of the GOS and fructans. So I'm going to whiz that up with some ready-made cream cheese. This is the garlic and herb variety. So again, there will be fructans and garlic in there, and this is a coconut based cheese, and this is listed as fructan containing. And I'm going to be using leeks. So because this is a fructan heavy meal, I've not yet decided whether I will just use the green parts or not, but I'm definitely going to use leek as my onion flavouring. And then just because I have some available, I'm also just going to throw in some of this spinach. And then we're probably going to use some lemon for flavouring and some dried herbs. And as I say, that is going to be alongside these little tiger rolls, which I am going to slather in garlic butter. So all in all, this is going to be a really, really fructan heavy meal. And because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a double dose. Now, sometimes double dose is recommended, particularly if you're eating a really, really high FODMAP meal, or if you're eating FODMAPs that you know you're particularly sensitive to. Another time when you use a double dose is that you wouldn't necessarily use the dose together, but when you're still eating after 30 minutes, the enzymes within FODZYME will themselves have begun to be digested. So if you still find yourself eating, say for example, if you're out, you're eating 3 courses, or you're social eating and you're chatting and things are dragging on a little bit longer than they would for a typical meal at home, then you would use a second dose. But today I'm going to double dose it. I'll probably put some on the pasta, directly on the pasta, and then I'll try and see if we can sprinkle some of it directly onto the garlic bread, because sometimes only a double dose will do. So let me show you how that looks. And I will be mixing this in, but just for aesthetic reasons, I am going to just leave it there on the top for now. But the best way to eat it is to mix that in so it's getting into contact with as much of the FODMAPs as possible. So this combination here is exactly the type of meal I would really have missed out on during the restricted phase of the low FODMAP diet. We've got the fructan heavy pasta, we've got the fructan heavy garlic bread, and whilst together they're a match made in heaven. I know for a fact that at one stage for me, eating this many FODMAPs all at once would have caused me some serious issues. And it's a meal such as this, your favourite meal, the type of meal that you tend to order when you're eating out, where I really think that FODZYME shines. I know for a fact that for me, if FODZYME had been available way back when, I would have been able to enjoy much more social eating and do it much more frequently than I did during the low FODMAP diet. But I'm not going to worry about that now, because FODZYME is here, and that means I can eat this entire meal and not need to worry about the consequences. Better late than never. So for today's FODZYME test, I'm going to be eating one of my all-time favourite meals, and that's pizza. I'm going to be using this ready-made wheat-based pizza dough. I'm going to add some garlic and onion into the tomato sauce. I'm going to top that with some tempeh ham-style crumbles, but what I'm also going to do is the FODZYME first bite method. And this is so simple. You just make sure that the whole dose goes straight onto the first bite of whatever you're eating, and that's it. Just get on with relaxing, enjoying and eating your meal as normal. And that makes it a really, really great way to do things when you're out and about with friends and family. If, say, for example, you were sharing a meal such as pizza. Also, if you're not sure exactly how much of the food in front of you you're planning on eating, you don't need to worry about forcing down more than you actually feel like you want, because you've spread your dose across the whole of the food. You can just get it there in your first bite, so it's a much more natural social eating experience, which is something that we don't typically expect on a low FODMAP diet. So let me show you how that's done. So when making pizza, I prefer to simmer my onion, garlic and peppers with the tomato sauce to make a rich ragu before spreading the sauce on the base. This doesn't reduce the FODMAPs, but I think it tastes much better. Then once I've sprinkled on the cheese, I add my vegan ham on top to go crispy. I am ready for this. Now I am hungry today, so I will be eating the full pizza that you've seen me make and probably a little bit of side salad. But just for ease, I've just popped a single slice into this good little takeaway box, just because this is where I'm going to be focusing the FODZYMEs. And just before I tuck in, I just wanted to let you know some of the little differences between eating this high FODMAP pizza in conjunction with the FODZYME versus how this meal would have looked on the more restricted phase of the low FODMAP diet. So you saw me use that simple wheat base, that pre-made wheat base. You can get it from any supermarket. The low FODMAP alternative to that, the only one that I'm aware of is the Shah low FODMAP pizza base, and unfortunately that's only low FODMAP in a single slice. So versus that entire pizza that you've seen me make today on the low FODMAP diet, that would be my meal. That is a huge difference. And the pizza bases, they are a specialist item. You can tend to get them from most supermarkets, but they are at a bit of a premium. Now obviously if you're only going to be able to eat one slice of it, the costs are probably going to balance out, but what is not going to balance out is a single slice of pizza versus that entire pizza that you've seen me make today that I am going to really enjoy. So obviously for this meal on the low FODMAP diet, you're going to have to add in probably fries or chips, definitely a substantial side salad. You're going to have to add other things to make that a meal. So again, we've got our little single dose of Fodzyme here. And I just like to give them a little bit of a tap. The inside, it is quite similar to a sweetener packet, and it can sometimes get a little bit clogged up in the top there, so I just like to give it a little bit of a shake. And then it just tears really easily. You don't need scissors. And we're just going to concentrate all of that dose. So you can see that we're using that full dose, and it is quite a significant dose for doing the first bite method. But once we've concentrated all that in this one area, we don't need to think about it for the rest of the meal, providing that we're still not eating in 30 minutes time. And if we are, we're just going to add another dose. So you can see now we've got that full dose of Fodzyme right on there, and I'm just going to take one great big bite. You need to make sure that you're chewing that really well to mix that Fodzyme in with all the FODMAPs in the food. That dose was probably the most obvious in terms of taste and texture, but you saw that we really loaded that on to that one initial bite. As soon as the flavours, the garlic and the onion and the tomato started to come through from the pizza, the sweetness just dissipated. I've not been left with any kind of sweetness on the tongue, and I'm just ready now to take my next bite. And that's the thing, because we've eaten all those enzymes in that first bite, they're now busy getting to work, so we don't want to be leaving too big a gap before we continue with the meal as normal. So I'm going to go finish the rest of this pizza, and I really hope that that was helpful for you. So good. So that was everything I ate with the help of Fodzyme. And if this video has inspired you to learn more and to start your own food freedom journey, then please feel free to leave all of your questions down below, and I'll answer them as quickly and honestly as I can. Don't forget to check out the links in the description box to read the full blog post, and more importantly, to get that 15% discount. Another huge thanks to the lovely team at Fodzyme for sponsoring this video, letting me do my own thing and speak my truth. And thanks so much to you for being here and supporting the work that I do. If you found this video helpful, then please do leave it a thumbs up. It really does help more people like you to find my content when they search for it. Happy eating, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.